Booktopia, the annual celebration of books and the authors who write them, returned to the Northshire Bookstore this past weekend, April 26th to 28th. As it has done since it first arrived at the bookstore in 2011, Booktopia gave book readers a chance to hear directly from a group of authors about the plots of their novels, how they were developed, and ask questions, and also having the authors read to them from their books. Booktopia 24 kicked off on Friday, April 26th, with a welcome led by Nicole Ihaz, one of the bookstore's co-owners, held at the First Baptist Church across the street from the bookstore.
Last year was my first Booktopia, and I have to say, I mean, these aren't even the right words to describe it, but I was so moved. I was so moved by y'all's passion and for books, for each other, for coming to Northshire. It means the world to us, and we're so happy to have you all back.
That was followed by presentations from some of the bookstore's booksellers, who offered some of their current recommendations and favorite recent reads.
Asked to offer my opinion of books first, so that other presenters can give the sun a chance to shine through the dark clouds that seem to attract me. This morning, I'll be talking about bigotry, divorce, deception, the Chicago fire, and two Elizabeths. As Billy Wilder famously said, it all makes life worth living.
From there, it was on to a series of author sessions that afternoon and on into the weekend, held at both the bookstore and at the nearby Baptist Church. All told, 18 such sessions were held.
Anyway, I started working on my terrible, horrible book. And then, as I was trying to write the character, and in the Nabokovian way, from under a pile of garbage on the sentence, as I was writing it, I saw a pair of eyes. Sipsworth was in the book. So I was trying to write the story of this woman in Paris in the 1950s, and mice kept appearing in the story. Like, you're imagining the story and you're typing, and I'd see a mouse. So she was supposed to fall down some steps, but she didn't because there was a mouse there to warn her.
We had a chance to talk with Jenna Rose Nethercott, one of the authors who were featured at the Booktopia, about her most recent book, 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart. The book is a series of short stories which explore a range of human emotions, some of them that lean into the darker side of life, but are also magical.
Yeah, so 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart, which is my newest book and the one that I'm here at the festival with, is, like you said, a collection of short stories. They're surrealist, sort of speculative short stories. And short stories have always been sort of my one true love. Even when I was writing poetry, my favorite authors were all weird short story writers. And so I really wanted to kind of throw my hat into the ring with my heroes. And so when when the Lumberjack's Dove came out in 2017, 2018, I decided I wanted to go on the road on this big wild tour. And because I can never do things halfway, to me going on tour meant converting the trunk of my Honda Fit into a camper, which if you've ever seen a Honda Fit, they are not a spacious vehicle, but I'm also 5'2", so I made it work. I commissioned a friend to create a 60-foot long hand-cranked panoramic puppetry show that animated sections of the book, and then I hit the road. And I was on the road for 8 months solid in a new city about every 2 days, performing this puppetry show based around the lumberjack stuff. And as I was traveling, I was writing. So I would drive all day, I would do a show at a bookstore in the evening. I would then drive my little car bed to some street in front of a dive bar or a neighborhood I could find in whatever town I was in. I'd park, I'd crawl into my little bed in the trunk, and then I would write a short story. And often the experiences that I was having, the people that I was meeting, the sort of surrealist state of living on the road leaked into the stories that I was writing. And then I would fall asleep in the trunk, wake up in the next morning, and I'd do it again.
What advice do you have for other writers who are struggling to make that breakthrough when it comes to actually getting a work published? Is that almost as I've heard some people describe it as that's almost the hardest part of the entire process, is once you just getting the book actually physically printed and
I think all
accepted.
parts of the process are the hardest part of the process while you're in it. I would say, regarding publishing, yeah, I mean, it's a rough industry to break into, but I really think it's a numbers game. And you have to recognize that the key is just like continuously throwing things at the wall. And the sort of secret game I was playing with myself when I was submitting my first book was I had a goal of getting 100 rejection letters in a year. And that way, I was able to kind of circumvent imposter syndrome. I was able to justify sending my work out to places that I was convinced it would never get into, because then I would get a rejection letter to add to my pile. I would win my little point. And by doing that, and by sending out tons and tons and tons of submissions, just trying to rack up rejections, I was every once in a while surprised with an acceptance. So I would recommend kind of trying to reframe the thinking like that, because it is sort of brutal to be submitting and 99% of those submissions are rejected. And that's the truth of the matter, but it really is a numbers game. And so if you start looking at the rejections as the goal, it makes it a lot less painful, and you're able to play that numbers game in a much higher quantity until it eventually sticks.
The event wound up with an interview and conversation between Vermont author Chris Bohalian, who discussed his new novel, The Princess of Las Vegas, with Joe Donahue of WAMC Northeast Public Radio at the Arkell Pavilion at the Southern Vermont Arts Center on Sunday.
The relationship between Betsy and Marissa, because that is, they need each other, don't they?
They really do. I mean, Betsy is one of those really big-hearted, kind human beings who becomes a social worker, but like a lot of us, she was really scarred by 2020 in the pandemic. And she realizes in 2020 that I'm in my mid-30s, I'm living in an apartment I'm renting at the edge of the University of Vermont that is the exact same kind of apartment that most parents rent for their 19-year-old kid. And I'm not sure what the future holds for me, but when one of her social worker family's older sons shows up to pick up the kid's sister after counseling in a brand new Audi that he bought with his crypto money, she begins to rethink her future.
Their conversation was followed by a book signing, one of several held over the course of the weekend. The idea for Booktopia was a brainchild of two book publishing professionals, Ann Kingman and Michael Kindness. The pair had authored a weekly book podcast for several years titled Books on the Nightstand, when several of their listeners began expressing an urge to meet them in person instead of through their headphones. And so an idea was born: combine a weekend retreat of readers and writers at an independent bookstore and have some fun. We caught up with Nicole Ihaz midway through the Booktopia to get her take on the event.
Well, really, it's about the people. It's about the Booktopians. Last year was my first year experiencing Booktopia, and sort of was just kind of watching and seeing and meeting all the people and their passion about books, the conversations that come out of this. Our booksellers get so excited because we're here to talk to them about books we're passionate about and sell them those books. It's a wonderful weekend, and it's a great group of people, and we're always so happy to have them.
So how do you select the authors for this event? Is there some process you go through to find the 10 or 12 writers?
It's a little bit all over the place, but really it's down to our events team. So Rachel and Jess are incredible, and we're really looking for authors that their work can speak to a large audience, and authors that are really engaging. Hopefully they have a book coming out around this time. Also just connections that we've made. Sometimes you put up a social media post and hear from an author, and that can lead to them being here, like Simon Van Boy, which is really exciting.
The timeless form of relaxation granted by sitting down with a good book is far from dead. Or the impulses to write them and to think about clever plot ideas. Or the bookstores to browse them in and buy them from. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.